I'm Chloe, 28, female, and my best friend deliberately locked me out of her wedding shower after I drove 3 hours to attend. Then lied about it for months until another bridesmaid exposed the truth and revealed she never wanted me there in the first place. For 20 years, Olivia wasn't just a friend. She was the other half of my thoughts, the keeper of my childhood secrets, and the person I believed would be sitting next to me in a rocking chair when we were 80, laughing about the lives we'd lived. The story of us was a novel I thought I knew by heart, but I discovered I'd only read the version she wanted me to see. The final chapters were a brutal lesson in how a single, cruel act can rewrite a lifetime of memories, turning them from cherished keepsakes into painful, sharp-edged reminders of a love that was never truly reciprocated. Our friendship began in the second grade, over a shared box of crayons and a mutual agreement that the color cerulean was far superior to plain blue. Olivia was magnetic even then, with a bright, confident smile and an energy that pulled everyone into her orbit. I was quieter, a bookish observer, and I was happy to be her chosen confidant. We were an inseparable pair, Chloe and Olivia. It had a ring to it, a sense of permanence that I treasured. Our houses were a short bike ride apart, and most of my formative memories are set against the backdrop of her floral wallpaper or the worn-in comfort of my family's living room couch, with her beside me. She was the one who convinced me to try out for the school play in middle school, holding my trembling hands backstage. I was the one who sat with her for hours in the hospital waiting room when her grandmother fell ill, quizzing her for a history exam she was sure she'd fail. We navigated everything together: first crushes, first heartbreaks, the awkwardness of high school dances, and the tearful goodbye when we left for different colleges. Distance, we promised, was just a number. And for a while it was. We talked every day, visited on weekends, and our bond felt unbreakable. Looking back now, through the painful clarity of hindsight, the warning signs were there. They were like faint, hairline fractures in a beautiful vase, easy to ignore until the whole thing shatters. Olivia had a way of subtly centering the universe around herself. It was never malicious, or so I thought. It was just an innate part of her personality. I remember my 20th birthday, a milestone I was particularly excited about. My parents had helped me plan a small dinner party with my closest friends from home. Olivia, who was a student an hour away, had promised to be there. I spent the day cooking and decorating, my stomach fluttering with anticipation. An hour before the party was set to start, she called me. "Chloe, I am so sorry," she began, her voice laced with a dramatic, breathless quality. "You are not going to believe this. Ashley's ex just showed up at our dorm and he's making a huge scene. She's an absolute wreck and I can't possibly leave her. You understand, right?" Of course, I understood. Or at least I said I did. I felt a pang of disappointment but pushed it down, picturing Olivia as the noble hero, comforting her distraught roommate. I spent my birthday making excuses for her absence to my other friends. It wasn't until a week later, when I was scrolling through social media, that I saw a photo from that same night. It was a group shot from a concert downtown, and there was Olivia, arm in arm with Ashley and a group of friends, all of them beaming. There was no distraught ex in sight. When I gently asked her about it, she was a whirlwind of excuses. "Oh, that was so much later. We took her out to cheer her up after he finally left. It was a last-minute thing. I didn't even think to call you. I was so drained." It sounded plausible enough, and I chose to believe her because the alternative was too painful to consider, that she had simply gotten a better offer. Another time, a few years later, I was up for a major promotion at the graphic design firm where I worked. It was a huge step, and the final presentation to the partners was the most nerve-wracking experience of my life. I had spent weeks preparing. Olivia was my designated cheerleader. We spoke the night before, and she gave me a rousing pep talk. "You're going to blow them away, Chloe. Just be you. They're going to love you." The presentation was scheduled for 10 a.m. She promised to call me at noon to hear how it went. Noon came and went. Then 1 p.m., then 2 p.m. I stared at my silent phone, the triumphant feeling from my successful presentation slowly souring into anxiety. Did something happen to her? I texted her, then called, my messages going unanswered. Finally, at almost 5 o'clock, she sent a breezy text. OMG, so sorry, got caught up in the most insane workday. How did it go? I later found out from her fiancé, Liam, that she had decided to take a mental health half-day and had spent the afternoon at a spa with another friend. She hadn't forgotten. She had simply prioritized her own relaxation over my moment of need. When I tried to talk to her about how hurt I was, she turned it around. I don't understand why you're making this into such a big deal, she'd said, a note of sharp defensiveness in her voice. I'm here for you now, aren't I? You got the promotion, that's all that matters. I let it go, swallowing my hurt. It was easier to accept her flawed apology than to face the growing emptiness in her side of our friendship. These incidents were threads in a larger tapestry I couldn't see. I saw them as isolated events, blips in an otherwise perfect friendship. I was the steady one, the reliable one, the one who always showed up. Olivia was the brilliant, sometimes flaky one, and I loved her for it. I thought it was my role to be her anchor. I never imagined that one day she would be the one to deliberately cut the rope, leaving me adrift in a sea of confusion and hurt. Her engagement to Liam, a kind and stable financial analyst who seemed to adore her, felt like the beginning of a beautiful new chapter for her, and by extension for us. When she asked me to be a bridesmaid, holding out a beautifully curated gift box with tears in her eyes, I didn't hesitate. I cried with her, completely unaware that my acceptance was merely another prop in a story she was writing, a story in which I was about to be unceremoniously written out. The bridesmaid proposal was classic Olivia. It wasn't just a question, it was a production. She had invited me over for what she called a critical life update, and I arrived at her apartment to find champagne chilling and a small, elegantly wrapped box on her coffee table. Inside was a silk robe embroidered with the word bridesmaid, a bottle of my favorite nail polish, and a handwritten card that made my heart ache with affection. Dear Chloe, it read, my wedding day wouldn't be complete without my first and forever friend by my side. Will you help me walk into my new life? Tears welled in my eyes as I hugged her tightly. Of course, I will, I whispered into her shoulder. You couldn't get rid of me if you tried. It felt like a reaffirmation of everything we were, a promise that even as our lives changed, our bond would remain the one constant. In that moment, all my fleeting doubts from the past dissolved. This was my Olivia, my best friend. Soon after, the Bridal Brigade group chat was born. It was a flurry of exclamation points and heart emojis, a digital space buzzing with excitement. There were 5 of us in total, Olivia, of course, her younger sister, Clara, who was the maid of honor, a bubbly colleague of hers named Jessica, a sweet-faced teacher named Megan, whom I'd met a few times and liked instantly, and me. Being 3 hours away, I knew I wouldn't be able to participate in all the local, spontaneous planning sessions, so I made it a point to be the most responsive and enthusiastic member of the group chat. I wanted Olivia to know that my distance was geographical, not emotional. I immediately booked a day off work for the dress shopping appointment, driving down and back in a single day. I spent hours that afternoon holding up swatches of fabric and zipping Olivia into endless tulle and satin creations, offering my honest but always gentle opinions. When she finally found the one, a breathtakingly simple but elegant A-line gown, her eyes met mine in the mirror, and the tearful, knowing smile she gave me felt like a reward for my devotion. You knew, didn't you? She mouthed and I just nodded, my own throat tight with emotion. The planning for the bridal shower began about 6 months before the wedding. Olivia, being an event planner, had a very specific vision. She wanted something chic and sophisticated, an afternoon tea party at a rented-out heritage house in her city. The group chat lit up with tasks. Clara, as maid of honor, took the lead on coordinating with the venue, while Jessica handled the invitations. Megan offered to organize the party games, and I, the graphic designer, was tasked with creating all the printed materials. The menus, the place cards, and a custom, soon-to-be Mrs. Archer banner. I poured my heart into the project. I spent my evenings sketching designs, wanting them to be a perfect reflection of Olivia's style. I sent her drafts, and she was effusive in her praise. Chloe, these are stunning. Better than anything I could have hired a professional for, she texted, followed by a string of happy crying emojis. I felt a surge of pride. This was how I could contribute, how I could bridge the physical distance between us. I printed everything on high-quality cardstock, carefully packed it all into a protective box, and mailed it to her. A week before the shower, Olivia called me to finalize the details. Her voice was cheerful, almost giddy. "Okay, so the shower is next." "Saturday," she said. "We're starting at 2 p.m. I'm texting you the address now. I absolutely cannot wait to see you. It's been too long." "I can't wait either," I told her, my own excitement building. "I've already blocked off the entire day. I'll probably head out around 10:30 a.m. to make sure I get there with plenty of time." "Perfect," she chirped. "It's going to be the best day." I had no reason to doubt her. The address she sent was for a lovely residential street, and I pictured a charming, historic home filled with laughter, tiny sandwiches, and all the people who loved Olivia most. I bought a new dress for the occasion, a floral print midi that felt just right for an afternoon tea. I spent a small fortune on a gift from her registry, a high-end espresso machine that I knew she coveted. The night before, I carefully wrapped it in shimmering silver paper and tied it with a white satin bow. I went to bed that night feeling a deep sense of contentment, my heart full of love for my friend and anticipation for the celebration to come. I was so happy to be a part of her world, so proud of the woman she was becoming. I had no idea that her world had already been cordoned off, and I was standing on the wrong side of the velvet rope. The morning of the shower was bright and sunny, a perfect late spring day. I woke up early, feeling a familiar hum of excitement. I hummed along to the radio as I got ready, carefully applying my makeup and styling my hair. I slipped on my new floral dress, feeling festive and elegant. Grabbing the large, beautifully wrapped gift, a card tucked into the ribbon, I felt a swell of affection for Olivia. Today was all about her, and I was thrilled to celebrate the next chapter of her life. The drive was just under 3 hours, a straight shot down the highway. I passed the time by listening to a playlist we had made back in college, a nostalgic mix of indie pop and late 2000s hits. Each song brought back a flood of memories, singing at the top of our lungs on road trips, dancing in her dorm room, consoling each other after a silly argument. I smiled to myself, thinking how far we'd come. The friendship that had seen us through teenage angst was now witnessing weddings and mortgages. It felt profound, important. I pulled onto the street Olivia had sent me at exactly 1:45 p.m., 15 minutes early, just as I'd planned. It was a beautiful, tree-lined road with well-maintained, historic houses, just as I had imagined. I located the number she'd given me and parked my car across the street. It was a lovely 2-story Victorian with a wraparound porch and a beautifully manicured garden. But as I got out of my car, a prickle of confusion disturbed my happy mood. The house was quiet. There were no cars parked out front, save for one minivan a few houses down. There were no balloons tied to the mailbox, no telltale signs of a party in progress. I checked my phone. The address was correct. The time was correct. Maybe I was just the first one here? That seemed unlikely, given that the party was supposed to start in 15 minutes. I walked up the stone pathway, the large gift box feeling suddenly awkward and conspicuous in my arms. I rang the doorbell, its cheerful chime echoing loudly in the stillness. I waited. Nothing. I shifted my weight, my heels sinking slightly into the soft grass. I rang it again, holding the button down a little longer this time. Still nothing. A knot of anxiety began to form in my stomach. I knocked, my knuckles rapping sharply against the heavy oak door. "Hello, Olivia," I called out, feeling foolish. The only response was the rustling of leaves in the gentle breeze. I stepped back and peered into the front windows, but heavy curtains obscured the view. Okay, don't panic, I told myself. There had to be a simple explanation. I pulled out my phone and called Olivia. It rang and rang, the familiar tone grating on my nerves before clicking over to her voicemail. "Hey, it's Olivia, leave a message," her chipper, recorded voice announced. "Hey, Liv, it's me," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "I'm here, at the address you sent for the shower. I think I might be a little early, but the house seems really quiet. Just give me a call back when you get this. I sent a text next. Hey, I'm outside. Is this the right place? I watched the screen, waiting for the three little dots that would signal her reply. Nothing. The message remained stubbornly marked as delivered. I paced the porch for another 10 minutes, my initial excitement completely replaced by a growing sense of dread and confusion. The street remained quiet. No other guests arrived. The silence from the house felt definitive, absolute. Maybe she had the date wrong? No, we had just confirmed it. Maybe there was a last-minute change of venue? If so, why hadn't she told me? Why wasn't she answering her phone? My mind raced, trying to find a logical reason for this bizarre situation. My best theory was that there had been some kind of family emergency. That was the only thing that made sense. Something sudden and terrible must have happened, and in the chaos, they'd had to cancel the party, and she hadn't been able to reach me. A wave of concern washed over me, eclipsing my own confusion. I hoped she was okay. After waiting for nearly 45 minutes, my hope had shriveled into a cold, hard lump of disappointment. It was clear no one was coming. No party was happening here. Feeling utterly dejected, I walked back to my car, placed the expensive gift on the passenger seat, and started the long, silent drive home. The nostalgic playlist now felt mocking. I turned it off, and the 3-hour journey stretched before me, filled with nothing but the low hum of the engine and 1,000 unanswered questions. The beautiful, sunny day now seemed to cast long, dark shadows, and a feeling of unease settled deep in my bones. A premonition that something was far more wrong than a simple canceled party. The 3-hour drive home felt twice as long. My mind was a relentless loop of what-ifs and worried scenarios. Every time my phone buzzed with a notification, my heart would leap, but it was never her. It was a work email, a news alert, a message from my mom. Olivia remained silent. By the time I walked back into my own quiet apartment, the floral dress felt like a costume from a play I had failed to be cast in. The beautifully wrapped gift on my kitchen counter looked like a monument to my own foolishness. I didn't hear from her until nearly 10 o'clock that night. My phone finally lit up with her name, and I snatched it up, a mixture of relief and frustration churning inside me. "Oh my gosh, Chloe, I am so sorry," she gushed, her voice thick with what sounded like exhaustion and distress. "You are going to kill me. We had to cancel the shower. It was a total nightmare." "What happened? Is everyone okay?" I asked, my concern for her immediately overriding my own hurt feelings. She launched into a detailed, convoluted story. Liam's grandmother had a fall this morning. It was really bad. We all had to rush to the hospital. It was absolute chaos. My phone died in the middle of it all. I just got it plugged in. Clara was supposed to message the group, but I think in all the panic, she only sent it to the local girls. I feel absolutely terrible that you drove all that way for nothing. I'm so sorry. Every word was delivered with the perfect note of sincerity. It was plausible. It was dramatic. It was exactly the kind of chaotic event that would excuse her silence. My anxiety eased, replaced by sympathy. "Olivia, don't even worry about it," I said, my voice softening. "That's awful. The only thing that matters is if his grandmother is okay." "She's stable now, but it was really touch and go for a while," Olivia said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "Honestly, today was just a complete write-off. We'll make it up to you, I promise. We have to do a special celebration, just us." We talked for a few more minutes, her apologies so profuse and her story so detailed that my doubts were almost entirely erased. Almost. A tiny, persistent voice in the back of my mind whispered that something still felt off. The sheer, impenetrable silence of that house, the fact that not a single other person had shown up, the neatness of her explanation, it felt a little too perfectly constructed, but I silenced that voice. I had to. This was Olivia, my best friend of 20 years. To doubt her would be to doubt the very foundation of our friendship. I chose to believe her. In the weeks and months that followed, life seemed to return to normal, but with a subtle, disquieting shift. It was like looking at a familiar picture that was now hanging slightly askew. Olivia was busy with wedding planning, a justification she used for her increasingly sporadic communication. Our daily texts became weekly check-ins. Our long phone calls dwindled to quick, 5-minute conversations where she would talk at length about her latest vendor meeting or seating chart dilemma before rushing off. She never mentioned the makeup celebration again. When I would gently probe about the shower, asking how Liam's grandmother was doing, her answers were vague. "Oh, she's much better, thanks for asking," she'd say brightly, before quickly changing the subject. I saw photos from the bachelorette party planning weekend that I wasn't invited to, with Olivia, Clara, Jessica, and Megan all laughing over brunch. The excuse was that it was a last-minute, spur-of-the-moment thing, but it stung nonetheless. I tried to tell myself it was just wedding stress. Brides could be notoriously self-absorbed, and Olivia's personality already leaned in that direction. I tried to be the understanding friend, the low-maintenance bridesmaid. But the feeling of being kept at arm's length grew stronger. I felt less like a cherished friend and more like a distant acquaintance who had been given a courtesy title. The lingering doubt about the day of the shower solidified into a quiet, painful certainty in my heart. Her story just didn't add up. If there had been a true family emergency, wouldn't Liam have posted something, or her sister? Wouldn't one of the other bridesmaids have reached out to me with concern? Their social media accounts from that day were conspicuously silent, which at first seemed to corroborate Olivia's story, but now felt more like a coordinated cover-up. I wrestled with my suspicions in silence. Bringing them up felt monumental, like pulling a thread that could unravel everything. What if I was wrong? I would have accused my best friend of a monstrous, incomprehensible lie, and our friendship would never recover. And what if I was right? The thought was even worse. What would it mean if Olivia had orchestrated such a cruel deception? Who was this person I thought I knew? So I said nothing. I continued to play my part, responding enthusiastically to wedding updates, offering help whenever I could, and quietly nursing the ache in my chest. The espresso machine I had bought for her shower sat in my closet, a silent, silver-wrapped accusation. I was caught in a painful limbo, clinging to the hope that I was just being paranoid, while the cold, hard evidence of her indifference mounted with each passing day. The truth, I feared, was something I wasn't ready to face, because I knew, instinctively, that it would shatter the world I had so carefully built around the idea of our unbreakable bond. The truth didn't arrive with a dramatic explosion, but with a quiet phone call on a rainy Tuesday evening, 3 months after the non-existent shower. I was at home, sketching a new logo design for a client, when an unknown number flashed on my screen. I usually let those go to voicemail, but something prompted me to answer. "Hello." "Hi, Chloe, it's Megan," a soft voice said. I recognized it instantly. It was Megan, the teacher, the kind-faced bridesmaid. "Megan, hi, how are you?" I asked, my voice overly bright. A dozen thoughts raced through my mind. Was she calling about the wedding? Had something happened? "I'm okay," she said, but her tone was hesitant, heavy with a weight I couldn't decipher. "Listen, is this a bad time to talk? I have something I need to tell you, and I'm really sorry, but I just can't keep it to myself any longer." My blood ran cold. I put down my stylus, my full attention now on the phone pressed against my ear. "No, it's not a bad time at all. What's going on?" There was a long pause, filled only by the sound of her taking a deep, shaky breath. "It's about the bridal shower," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "The one back in May." I sat frozen, my stomach twisting into a tight, painful knot. I knew, in that instant, that my deepest, most suppressed fears were about to be confirmed. "It wasn't cancelled, Chloe," Megan said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "It happened. We were all there." The air left my lungs. The room seemed to tilt, the lines of my furniture blurring at the edges. I couldn't speak, so she continued, her voice filled with guilt and shame. "Olivia lied to you. There was no family emergency. Liam's grandmother was fine. She was on a cruise that week. Olivia, she didn't want you there." Each word was a physical blow, knocking the wind out of me, leaving me gasping for air. What do you mean she didn't want me there?" I finally managed to choke out, the question sounding alien and pathetic to my own ears. "I don't know all the details," Megan confessed, but I know she's become really competitive with you. She was jealous of your promotion. She felt like you were judging her life with Liam, silly things that she blew way out of proportion in her own head. A few weeks before the shower, she told us that she felt like you two had grown apart and that having you there would feel fake. She said she was just going to tell you the party was canceled. My mind reeled, trying to process the cruelty of it. Jealousy? Judging her? I had been nothing but supportive. I had celebrated her joys as if they were my own. The lie was one thing, but the motive behind it was a level of malice I couldn't comprehend. But I was there, I whispered, the memory of that lonely porch flashing in my mind. I drove all the way. I knocked, I called. Megan let out a sound that was half sob, half sigh. I know, that was the worst part. We were all inside. Olivia had given you an address, but she told you to come at 2 p.m. while she told the rest of us to be there by noon. The party was already in full swing when you would have arrived. And then she told us that if you happened to show up, we were not to answer the door. She said she'd handle it later. The full, horrifying picture clicked into place. They were all inside. The quiet house wasn't empty. It was full of people who were silently standing to me knock on the door. Olivia, Clara, Jessica, and Megan, they had all sat there in a conspiracy of silence while I stood outside, confused and worried. Olivia hadn't just lied. She had orchestrated a scene of profound humiliation. She had directed her friends to actively ignore me, to treat me as if I didn't exist. I saw you through the window, Megan admitted, her voice cracking. I saw your car pull up and I saw you walking to the door with a big gift. I told Olivia you were there and she just shrugged. She turned the music up a little louder and told everyone to keep talking. It was one of the cruelest things I have ever seen. I felt sick, Chloe. We all did, but we were scared of her. It's no excuse, I know. I am so sorry. The phone felt slippery in my hand. Tears were streaming down my face, hot and silent. The friendship I had cherished for 2 decades dissolved in an instant, revealing something rotten and ugly at its core. It wasn't a slow drifting apart. It was a deliberate, calculated act of emotional violence. The lie about the canceled party was almost a kindness compared to this truth. The truth was that she had gathered her friends to watch her humiliate me. "Thank you for telling me, Megan," I said, my voice hollow. I didn't have the energy for anger yet. I was just empty, scooped out, a shell of the person I had been 5 minutes ago. The history I shared with Olivia, the book of our friendship, was now a work of fiction. Every shared laugh, every tearful hug, every whispered secret was now tainted by this singular, monstrous act. She hadn't just locked me out of her party. She had locked me out of her life and thrown away the key, leaving me to believe the door was still open. For 2 days, I existed in a fog of pure shock. I went to work, I answered emails, I ate food without tasting it. Megan's words echoed in my head on a constant loop. She turned the music up a little louder. The image of it, of Olivia, my best friend, shrugging as I stood on her porch, then deliberately drowning out the sound of my knocking, was a wound that refused to stop bleeding. The grief was immense, but underneath it, a slow, cold anger began to build. It was the anger of betrayal, but also the anger of a person who has finally realized their own worth. I deserved more than this. I deserved an explanation, not that any explanation could ever excuse what she did. I knew I couldn't let it go. I couldn't just quietly bow out of the wedding and fade away. That's what she would expect. She had counted on my quiet nature, on my tendency to avoid conflict. She had counted on me being the one to swallow the hurt, as I had done so many times before. Not this time. I decided to call her. A face-to-face confrontation felt too raw, too volatile. I needed the distance of a phone line to keep my composure. I waited until Saturday morning, the same day of the week she had left me standing on that porch. I sat on my sofa, my heart hammering against my ribs, and dialed her number. She answered on the second ring, her voice sickeningly cheerful. "Chloe, hey, you, I was just thinking about you. We need to finalize our nail polish color for the big day." Her casual, bubbly tone was so dissonant with the turmoil inside me that it nearly made me laugh. It was all a performance, and I was done being her audience. I'm not calling about nail polish, Olivia, I said, my voice low and steady, colder than I intended. The cheerfulness in her voice vanished, replaced by a cautious defensiveness. Oh, okay, is everything all right? You sound weird. I know about the shower, I said flatly. There was no need for a dramatic lead-up. The truth was its own explosion. Silence, a thick, heavy silence stretched across the line. I could almost hear the gears turning in her head as she scrambled for a new lie, a new way to spin the narrative. I don't know what you're talking about, she finally said, her voice tight. I told you we had to cancel it because of Liam's grandmother. Stop it, I snapped, my composure cracking for a second. Just stop lying. Megan told me everything. She told me the party happened. She told me you were all there. She told me you instructed everyone not to answer the door when I knocked. The silence on the other end of the line was different this time. It wasn't the silence of someone thinking of a lie. It was the dead, empty silence of someone who has been caught. When she finally spoke, her voice was stripped of all its warmth, all its practiced charm. It was flat and hard. Megan shouldn't have done that, she said. Not, I'm sorry. Not, it was a misunderstanding. But Megan shouldn't have told you. That was her first instinct, to blame the person who exposed her, not to apologize for her own actions. In that single sentence, I saw the real Olivia, the one who had been hiding behind a mask of friendship for 20 years. So it's true, I said, my voice trembling slightly. All of it, you really did that. Look, Chloe, she began, a sigh of annoyance coloring her words, as if I were the one inconveniencing her. It's not that big of a deal. The wedding planning has been incredibly stressful, and to be honest, I just didn't have the energy to deal with you that day. Deal with me? I repeated, my voice rising in disbelief. Deal with me? I was your best friend. I drove 3 hours to celebrate you. I bought you a gift. I designed your invitations. I have done nothing but support you. And you talk about it like I'm some kind of chore you had to deal with. You wouldn't understand, she said dismissively. Our lives are just on different tracks now. You're so focused on your career, and I'm starting a family with Liam. We've grown apart. I felt like having you at the shower would be forced, like we'd just be pretending. I was trying to avoid a fake, awkward situation. The justification was so outrageously self-serving that I was momentarily stunned into silence. She had committed an act of breathtaking cruelty and was now packaging it as some kind of noble attempt at authenticity. So instead of having an honest conversation with me, your solution was to orchestrate a humiliating, elaborate lie? I asked, my voice shaking with a mixture of rage and hurt. You let me drive for hours, stand on a porch like an idiot, and worry that something terrible had happened to you, all because you couldn't handle a fake situation? That's your excuse. I knew you'd overreact, she said, her voice turning sharp and cold. This is exactly why I didn't want you there. You're always so dramatic, so sensitive. I just wanted one day without having to manage someone else's feelings. That was it. That was the final blow. After 20 years of me managing her feelings, absorbing her slights, making excuses for her selfishness, she had the audacity to call me the one who needed managing. The vase of our friendship didn't just have fractures, it was a pile of dust at my feet. There was nothing left to save. You're right about one thing, Olivia, I said, my voice suddenly calm, clear, and devoid of emotion. Our lives are on different tracks, because my track involves honesty and kindness and having respect for people I claim to love. I don't know what track you're on, but it's not one I want to be anywhere near. I took a deep breath. I'm backing out of the wedding. I will mail you the bridesmaid dress. Don't contact me again. Before she could respond, before she could utter another self-serving justification or a cold, empty word, I ended the call. I blocked her number. I blocked her on every social media platform. I severed the cord with a finality that was both terrifying and liberating. The person I had called my best friend for 2 decades no longer existed, if she ever had at all. There was only a stranger on the other end of the line, a stranger whose coldness was more painful than any lie she had ever told. The days following the confrontation were a strange mix of profound grief and intoxicating freedom. Mourning a 20-year friendship is a unique kind of heartache. It's like a part of your own history has been amputated. I found myself thinking of a shared joke and reaching for my phone to text her, only to remember that the person I wanted to text was gone. I'd see something in a store I knew she'd love and feel a pang of loss so sharp it took my breath away. It was a phantom limb, an ache for something that was no longer there. The fallout was messy. Olivia, unsurprisingly, immediately began a campaign to control the narrative. She told her family and our few remaining mutual acquaintances a sanitized version of events, that I had become jealous and difficult, that I had made unreasonable demands as a bridesmaid, and that I had bylaid on her right before her wedding out of sheer spite. Some people believed her. I received a few angry, misinformed texts from distant relatives of hers, and I saw a couple of our shared childhood friends quietly unfriend me on social media. Each instance was a small sting, a reminder of Olivia's reach and her skill at crafting a reality that served her best. But I refused to be drawn into her drama. I explained the truth, calmly and simply, to the people who mattered: my parents, my brother, and my two closest friends from college. They were horrified on my behalf, their unwavering support a balm on my wounded spirit. And then there was Megan. She called me the day after my confrontation with Olivia, having already heard the fallout. Olivia had kicked her out of the wedding party for betraying her trust. "I don't care," Megan told me over the phone, her voice resolute. "Being a part of that wedding started to feel like being an accessory to a crime. What she did to you was wrong, and I'm glad I told you. I'm just sorry it took me so long to find the courage." In the ashes of my oldest friendship, a new, more honest one began to grow. Megan and I started talking regularly. We lived in different cities, but we bonded over our shared experience with Olivia's casual cruelty. We found we had much more in common than just a manipulative ex-friend. She was kind, funny, and deeply empathetic, everything I once thought Olivia was. Our friendship became an unexpected gift, a testament to the fact that true connection can be found in the most unlikely of circumstances. The bridesmaid dress arrived back from the dry cleaner, encased in plastic, looking like a ghost. I boxed it up and mailed it to Olivia's address without a note. A week later, I took the silver-wrapped espresso machine from my closet, drove to a local charity donation center, and left it on their doorstep. Letting go of these physical objects felt symbolic, like I was finally clearing out the space she had taken up in my life, and in my heart, for far too long. Healing wasn't a straight line. There were days I felt strong and empowered, and days I felt an overwhelming sadness for the girl I used to be, the one who believed so fiercely in the purity of her friendship. But with each passing week, the sadness lessened, and the strength grew. I poured my energy into my work, taking on challenging new projects that brought me immense satisfaction. I started taking pottery classes on weekends, finding a meditative peace in shaping clay with my own hands. I was rediscovering who I was without Olivia as my mirror, and I found that I liked the person I was seeing. She was resilient, she was kind, and she was no longer willing to make herself small to protect someone else's fragile ego. Losing Olivia was like losing a foundational piece of my identity, but it also forced me to rebuild that foundation on something much more solid: self-respect. I learned that the length of a relationship does not equal its quality. I learned that some people are only in your life to teach you what you will no longer tolerate. And I learned that true friendship isn't about grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It's about the quiet, consistent acts of showing up, telling the truth, and guarding someone's heart as if it were your own. Olivia had taught me the painful difference between a friend for a season and a friend for life. So, for anyone out there who has ever been made to feel small, who has had their trust broken, or who has found themselves standing on the outside looking in, I want you to hear this. Your worth is not determined by someone else's inability to see it. The end of one story, no matter how painful, is always the beginning of another. You get to write the next chapter, and you can fill it with characters who deserve to be there.